right. Thanks everyone, it's great to be here. Today will be a first. And it's not that I haven't told the Hydroflask story a couple times, but today will be the first time that I share the real reason why Hydroflask has grown so quickly. And that is, since 2012 when I joined Hydroflask, we ran it like it was a mobile app startup or a tech startup. And it wasn't because, in 2012 I thought that is how we had to build a brand. It was just that after 18 years in Silicon Valley, that's all I knew how to do. And usually boards for companies and little brands prevent people from doing this. But for better or worse, the Hydroflask board was made up of tech operators and tech investors, and they didn't really know better either. So looking back in hindsight, this was either going to be kind of risky and maybe not work, or might actually be interesting. And so fortunately, 5 years later, things worked out really well for Hydroflask. And in a time where we constantly see headlines around how tech is taking from traditional retail, or tech is threatening brands, wouldn't it be interesting if we could look at what the better technology companies do and maybe borrow from their playbook and take from them and apply it to building brands and reinventing retail? I think that's only fair. So I'm going to talk about 4 things today. One is why this matters. 2 is what are the better things that the successful technology companies have done that we can learn from. 3 is how we apply that to Hydroflask, and a little bit about the Hydroflask story. And then 4 is talking about what do we look at going forward. Because I'd argue today, in 2017, is different than when I joined Hydroflask in 2012. So why this matters, I had all sorts of stuff put together a couple weeks ago, and then Amazon put a $12.7 billion bid on the table for Whole Foods Market, and that'll save us some time. So if any of you, however, just rolled in from your remote island where you've been surfing without access to the internet for a year, let me fill you in on a few things. 1, all those concerns about overcapacity in retail have kind of become a problem, right? So stores are closing, traffic's down, we have some challenges in physical retail. 2, that threat of e-commerce has become an issue as well. Amazon Prime memberships now account for 62% of households. 55% of product searches start on the Amazon marketplace, not always brand or specialty retail friendly. And in the last holiday season, 4 out of 10 shopping dollars were captured by Amazon. Welcome home. But the question is, what do we do about this? What can we learn? How do we apply it? What's going on? What do they do well? And to answer that question, I want to go back in time to when this whole thing started. And that was in August of 1995 when a company called Netscape went public. And it wasn't so much that they got public, it was the $1.4 billion opening day market capitalization was pretty amazing. It was really, really amazing considering the company had just started about 18 months prior. And it only had a product in the market for less than a year, which was an internet browser. And by December of 1995, that company was trading at $5.5 billion market cap. So whenever you can go from like 0 to $5.5 billion, that changes everything in less than 2 years. And this is at a time when hardly anyone had internet access, let alone could imagine what they would ever need a browser for, right? And so it was obviously a sign of some interesting things to come. And it really was interesting. So if we look at this over a 20-year period, what I call the kind of NASDAQ tech roller coaster, we noticed a couple things. 1, it's kind of a wild ride. So we kind of heard about some of these things. We most recently saw this with the mobile and the social time. And 2 is that when I arrived in Silicon Valley in 1994, well, I got there just in time. And when I left to run Hydroflask in June of 2012, I had a nice kind of front row seats for what happened in Silicon Valley. From the kind of crazy internet years to the social and mobile years that happened after that. Second thing you can kind of look at is, it wasn't so much any one of these things, broke the camel's back of traditional retail or create the challenges for us today. A browser, okay, e-commerce, shopping platform online. And at the time in '97 when Amazon went public, less than 150 million in revenue, a lot of criticism and skepticism over a business model of selling books over the internet. Like, where is that going to go? That's never going to go anywhere, is what most people said. But then you add to that kind of this whole mobile movement and social, and when you add it all up, it clearly is changing how people can discover, shop, share, influence each other, right? All of this adds up to be a big change. The third thing is there's a lot of things we can learn from these companies and others that really thrive and do well, which I'll talk about in a second. And after about 18 years in Silicon Valley, it became obvious there was moments where you get a sense like, I talk about the tech bubble, and I think that applies in lots of ways. One is like the industry is so different. How things happen in tech are so different. You don't really appreciate that until you bump into people from other industries and you start to say, oh gosh, like we're from Mars and they're from Jupiter or something like that. And that happened in 2012. I was at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, and I was working for a company. We provided the Apple Pay technology to Apple. And this is before we did this. So we were trying to do that. We had just finished helping Google launch a wallet. And this kind of attracted a lot of attention. And Citibank, they loved it. They were all in. They didn't really understand it. They barely understood the technology. They weren't sure about the business model. But all they knew is they were all in. And that was a good thing for us in terms of their helping to build the ecosystem. So they want to go to dinner with us in Barcelona. Now the problem is, in 2012, the economy in Spain is in the toilet. There was some stat that said like 50% of men 30 and under were unemployed and living at home. So you can imagine what that did to their dating prospects, right? So there's a lot of anger in Spain at the moment. So there's reports about protests, marches that are going to happen that night. So we're trying to get to dinner with a big group, Citibank, senior brass, a lot of us from this tech company. And we decided it might be easier and safer if we just got one vehicle to take us and get across town, so it might be hard. So we want to get a van, like a big van or something. Well, lost in translation, right? So we're sitting there and up rolls this white, stretched Ford Excursion limo with spinners and purple LEDs on the running board. And so all the tech guys, we're like, woohoo, this is awesome. Piling in their disco ball lights, all this stuff. Citibank execs look a little bit more nervous, but they're in. It's worse than we thought. We're trying to get across the city, and there's riot police, there's signs, capitalismo, no bueno, no EU, lots of protesting. And this felt, this is where we begin to tell the difference between the bankers and the tech people. Like, to me, the risk level felt okay. It's like camping surf trip to Mexico, and it's okay. I've seen this. They look more nervous, and it really came to a head when someone was taking a picture and they're gonna, tweet at the time. That's what you did. Something like, "Hey, rolling in Jay-Z's limo at MWC 2012 with Citibank executives." Hashtag nervous bankers, and they just went berserk because apparently Citibank executives get abducted and held for ransom in situations like this. I didn't know that. So a couple of things, one, tech was different than banking, was one conclusion. Two, glad I was in tech, not in banking. And three, yeah, we're in different worlds. Tech was just a whole different thing. But back to the main story. So what did I learn from the experience in the 18 years in Silicon Valley? And one is, you can't even get on the field if you don't have the talent and the capital and a real opportunity. And there's a whole nother story. Sometimes things that look like opportunities aren't. And the first time you kind of in a place where all this comes together, it's like a drug. It's just amazing. It's just the biggest rush in the world because you are off to change the world. You're off to do the new thing and the next thing. But it doesn't guarantee any success. It's almost to the point where, back to that Netscape IPO, if you can go from 0 to 5.5 billion in less than 2 years, there is capital. There is talent, running around Silicon Valley looking for that next big thing. So you're just in the game. But what you do learn from the companies that over time that separate and do win, that there are three things that they do really, really well. So let's talk about that. One is, they don't just sit around and come up with great ideas, right? So Tim Ferriss, great author, speaker, is spot on here. And there is no prize for best whiteboard. It's really about getting out there, taking action, doing something, right? So smart people will come up with smart plans. The winning companies go execute. And this boils down to something even more important when it comes to product. So there's a concept when you have an action bias around product called the least viable product. So, right, great quote from the founder of LinkedIn, but these two images actually are a real example of a first generation least viable product. Because in 1988, the inventor took these two, put them together, and it helped them carry extra water to survive a 100-mile bike ride in Arizona. And from that first experience, he kind of figured out what worked, what didn't work, made some iterations to that, created his next generation product, and invented Camelback. That was the beginning of the origin story of Camelback. So, and that's the name of the game, right? Because when you have an opportunity, right, people are risk averse. All of us have our inner perfectionists. We're not, it's not ready to go out yet. We are not, let's keep tweaking it. And the best companies, I think the best leaders, will push the envelope a bit and get that product out there and learn from real world experience and begin to iterate. All while, ideally, your competition still debating around the whiteboard, not even out of the gates. So very important action bias. As you saw today, any conversation talks about lessons from tech has to have a Steve Jobs slide. It's mandatory. But I picked one that isn't from the heyday of Apple in the later stages. I picked one from where Apple was really in trouble. And Steve Jobs had come back to Apple basically to save it. It had lost its way. And there was a quote found, and he wasn't the only one to talk about focus, but this one was really important. It came out of his Q&A at the Worldwide Developer Conference, where they're asking what he's going to do, how is he going to kind of resurrect this brand. And when he talked about focus, it wasn't just, we're going to focus on this, but the importance of focus is really about no. It's about what you're not going to do. And it's back to that whole talent, capital, opportunity. When you have that, there's almost an issue of too much optimism, too much we can do anything, that you'll take on too much. In the case of Apple in this era, it was a time in which they got out of printers and drives and peripherals, probably on the P&L were very lucrative, important businesses. And it wasn't so much about, hey, that was decent money. It was more about, well, what are the resources and issues that's pulling us, just to deal with that, and what is it taking away from? And it clearly was taken away from the types of things that Apple went on to do later. And so, in 1997, even in 1997, Apple had resource constraints and needed to focus. I guarantee you, all of us need to focus as well. The third thing that I picked up from my time in Silicon Valley was this quote. So Andy Grove, founder of Intel, well known, say, only the paranoid survive. And this was especially important when things are going well. When you just got funded, you landed this big deal, you got your new CMO on board, things are cranking. It's always remembering in the back of your mind that there's a runaway garbage truck with your name on it, and it's somewhere nearby, right? And for me, I saw this in my final time working for this tech mobile company, working with Nokia, working with RIM, the parent company of BlackBerry, right? Already kind of starting to taper off, and up comes this thing called the iPhone. And I think back to gosh, what do you think they wish they had more of back in 2005, 2006? More of that paranoia. You saw some of the quotes earlier, Ballmer, Microsoft, iPhone will never go anywhere, right? Paranoia would tell you that thing's gonna eat our lunch. And so what are we gonna do to stay ahead of it? So that was my time in the Valley and technology. Let's kind of see how these worlds collide. So June of 2012, I get recruited in to become the president and CEO of Hydroflask, right? So I'm gonna bring this whole tech approach to building an outdoor brand, and things were going to get interesting. So what did I inherit in 2012? So the company, fairly small, just finished a $2 million year. We had 12 employees in Bend, Oregon, long on passion, short on experience, but that was okay. We had very little intellectual property. So the concept of vacuum insulated bottle for cold water applications, very novel. Our founder, that was brilliant. But the core technology was invented in 1913 by William Stanley Jr. So what the patent attorneys will tell you is that there's a lot of prior art. So the things we tried, more often than not, there's not really core IP. We can start to protect our designs or look to our feel. So it wasn't so much about this big window of opportunity that we had to go figure it out, right? There's going to need to be a sense of urgency. In the world's largest market, single market for branded premium water bottles, which is the US outdoor and sporting goods market, we were not on the radar. We couldn't even afford to buy the research to tell us that we weren't on the radar, essentially. At that point, we were well capitalized, but prior to that. And then our target channel was any and all, so back to this focus issue. So our current head of product likes to laugh and look back at that era and say, yeah, our very stringent sales qualification processes involve seeing if a person could fog a mirror, and then bam, they got product, we're opening them. So, to me, that signaled really there's no focus. There wasn't a strategy, there wasn't a focus. So it's important for us to begin to focus. And what we're going to focus on was going to be important, which I'll talk about in a second. I'll fast forward to 5 years. So 2017, what happened? Well, in the last quarter that our parent company just shared recently, going back to 5 years before, we grew the top line 42 times. And so that took us to a $137 million run rate as of Q3 that ended last November that was shared. We're now the #1 bottle brand in the US sporting goods and outdoor. So that's the REI, that's the specialty outdoor and sporting goods stores. And we're now the #1 water bottle brand in the natural foods channel. So it's a Whole Foods market and equivalent. We did a recent brand tracker study. If everyone's been to Hawaii in the last 3 years, they love Hydroflask, and believe me, as a result, we love Hawaii. More than I loved Hawaii before that all happened. So our brand affinity there puts us in a #1 position, more than double the next brand, which is Camelback, and nearly 4 times that of the 3rd place brand. So we've kind of taken this thing up. Numerous awards and recognition for our growth rate, for being a great place to work. We were REI's Action Sports Vendor Partner of the Year 2 years ago. Just named the World Surf League's kind of exclusive water bottle partner for this year, and a lot of kind of product design awards. So clearly this didn't just happen in a vacuum, it wasn't all magic. I mean, there was an opportunity below this that we came into, and it was this. There was a $100 million retail business in the US sporting goods and outdoor. But when I looked at this market back in 2012, coming out of the smartphone, kind of mobile world, I saw kind of the water bottle equivalent of flip phones. Not a lot had changed here. And so there were some trends that were encouraging. And those were consumers were getting away from soda, drinking more water. They were realizing it was important to kind of have a balanced life and be healthy. Get outside, get to the beach, get to the park, get to the mountains. And then, thank God Gary's taking a lot of these plastic water bottles, turning them into apparel. But, a lot of them are also ending up in oceans and on our beaches and in landfills. So consumers are reading about that and beginning to shift towards reusable. And the thing that the water bottle industry could come up with in the last 5-6 years, their one innovation was removing bisphenol A from the product, right, BPA, so that the bottles wouldn't potentially poison a child. Not the most inspiring innovation that the category could come up with. So we felt it was right for a better experience. And it wasn't so important what we thought. What was important is what the consumers thought. And already we can see from the Amazon reviews and social media, consumers loved Hydroflask. And at the end of the day, they were like a water bottle. So it's really awesome how much a consumer could love Hydroflask. It was also at times a little scary how much a consumer could love Hydroflask. We would get calls when people lost their Hydroflask, not to blame us or have anything, but just to grieve. So we talked about a 7-step grieving process. It's like the dog, the puppy died or something. It's like, oh, I know, it must be hard, and you're angry, and then you deny it or whatever, then you move on. Like the quote from the person, the TSA agent's about to confiscate the bottle, they tear up. It's like, what do you mean I can't? This isn't possible, this can't happen. So they give them the Hydroflask back. So we love that, that was great. But going back to my tech background, I wasn't only focused on the opportunity coming into Hydroflask. Of course, what am I going to think about? I'm a little paranoid, right? So when I start in June of 2012, and I look out in the marketplace and I start thinking about competition, this is my mental image. And I feel like a 12-year-old with a letter opener, going out into this battlefield. Because at the time, right, our biggest competitors, Camelback and Stanley, were 25 to 30 times our size. Right? And from my background, when a company like Google or Facebook decides to do something, add a feature, get into something, they can wipe out dozens of companies just by adding a feature to their platform. So for us, we were concern. But we had to channel that paranoia into action. So we had to get going. We had to get onto that one thing called focus. And for me, it was pretty obvious. Like, we had to go create a brand. Because, you know, as a consumer, as a fan of outdoor products and outdoor and action sports products and brands, you know, products come and go, but brands endure. So we wanted to ride this new experience, this migration that consumers seem to be moving towards, and turn that into something more than just selling a bunch of bottles, but turn it into a brand. And like the Steve Jobs quote, it was great. That focus is so important for us, not so much as like, this is what we're doing, but in terms of telling us what not to do, what channels to get out of, what products not to do, begin to focus us. And that freed us up to go out for 5 steps that we took between 2012 and today that got us to that kind of growth that I shared with you. So let's go through those one by one. The first was talent. So, you know, 12 people, I was the 13th, and things were already growing. We were capitalized, we had an opportunity. So back to that entry ticket, it's pretty obvious we were missing one of the pieces that was really going to get us into the game. So starting in 2013, I began looking for kind of the Michael Jordans of product, you know, marketing, operations, e-commerce, sales. And when we found these people, man, I sold the vision and the passion of the journey, you know, with no holds barred. Like Ernest Shackleton sold his South Pole expedition, right? Win the hearts and minds. This is going to be amazing. We're changing the world. There's a whole new experience. We're going to be the brand. And it worked, right? We began to attract talent and get them on board. And no sooner did they come on board than I had to reprogram them. I mean, these are amazing, talented professionals, but they're traditional brand builders. And my whole world's different. And this was a struggle because apparently, right, working hard and being motivated for a boss that looks paranoid doesn't come naturally to everybody, right? This requires some delicate finessing. And I think the great analogy here is Phil Jackson coming into the Lakers, taking a team with some great individual talent, right? Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and turning them into a team, teaching them team basketball. So my approach with the leadership team that I built and a lot of the others in our company that come from great brand backgrounds is to get them on the same page and make them feel that kind of paranoia, the sense of urgency, action bias. The way we did that is we kind of went out from the future and said, here's the vision, and they get fired up. We work our way back. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do. And then we got really honest about what is our advantage, like what's going to make it so that we're the people that do that. And we all came to the same conclusion. It's like, well, just we have so much time, right? And then week by week, this manifests itself, I'm sure for them, in a really annoying way, by me asking questions like, why does it take so long to get a product to market? And why does it take so long to fully deploy at REI? And why does it take so long to onboard a factory that we feel really good about in terms of their social responsibility and quality that supports our brand? And it wasn't like I hired dumb people, because more often than not, they were right, but maybe we can do it 10% faster or 20% faster, or every now and then we did it like 50% faster. And do you think when we have like a window of opportunity as our advantage that added up to make a big difference? It absolutely did. It absolutely made a big difference. So we got our ticket to play, we got people in the right mindset, right, paranoid, a little active, and here we go, let's focus. And we had one other issue. People didn't really care about water bottles in 2013. And at the time, I mean, consumers had drawers full of water bottles. You know, you go to a music festival and the local hospital will give you one. You go to start your new job, hey, stay hydrated, here's your single wall bottle, right? You already got Nalgene's, you got stuff, bike bottles, you know, just clutter all over. So we're like, hey, we have a new bottle, you know, door slam. Likewise, media is like, we're not talking about this, there's nothing to talk about. And buyers were the same. It's like they got bigger categories to deal with. You know, we got bottles, we don't need to talk to you. So in 2013, you know, back to this focus and what are we, and not just focusing on like, here we're a bottle company, we decided we were actually not in the water bottle business. We were in the ice cold, refreshing water experience business. And because we had a beer growler, we were in the frosty beer delivery experience business, right? And so we figured there's no better way for people to understand that than to have them experience it. So this is a picture of our PR manager, Lucas Alberg, who at the time would just overnight a Hydroflask with ice in it and write a little note like, hey, it's summertime in Bend, Oregon. It's 89 degrees. Looks like it's hot there tomorrow. Thought you might get a little dehydrated. You know, here you go, I'll check in with you tomorrow. Have a great day. And so FedEx would come, they'd open the box, you know, they'd put it in this beautiful, like, wooden box. So it wasn't like they knew we were sending them something. They were pretty much blowing us off. You know, they're not responding to us. So this is why we're sending this. And it comes in this beautiful wooden box. So they're thinking, wine, whiskey, something, right? They're like, what is this? They got open right away. And then they kind of got it. They got the experience. And the editor for Sea Kayaker sent a note back on his business card and said, give Lucas a raise. Sent it back to Lucas. Lucas taped it to my monitor like 2 seconds later, right? I come to work and there it is. So this was working. And we had a lot of fun with this. There was a time when there was a heat wave on the East Coast and we overnighted margarita rocks to editors in New York City. So it arrived like, you know, Friday, so they could have a margarita party at their desk. And that gave new meaning to the term, you know, generating buzz, right? So that was and it worked. It didn't only work with the media, right, just getting this traction, but it worked with buyers. And then it's back to this focus. It's like, we don't want any retailer, we don't want just any buyer. Our focus is in our strategies, we're gonna build a brand. So where is the best place for us to show up? Well, it's a real kind of core outdoor retailer. So here's one, Great Outdoor Provisions on the East Coast. It was happening in action sports in Hawaii, so it was like the core action sports retail, like TNC. We had a beer growler, so it was people like Stone Brewing. That was awesome. Coffee roasters, natural food stores, really getting premium. And we leaned in this channel really, really hard because we were not a brand. You know, we had a better product per se. But these are the retailers, these are the companies that it's their job to kind of curate and find those interesting brands and put that together and deliver that great shopping experience. And not all of them are going to, you know, continue to be successful, but for us at this time, this was so key for us. And the success followed. You know, there's pictures of Whole Foods Market, Hawaii, and we innovated not only just kind of the product, but ultimately kind of how these are merchandised. They're bringing color blocking into to the category. And then the lower right one is O'Neill stores here, putting a hydration station into the whole retail display. So you can walk up, buy a bottle, fill it, and, you know, off you go. So completely different ways that we can do that. So building that presence is really important for us in building our brand. So the last step started back in 2014 and really started to happen in 2015. So by this time we were on the radar. You know, we had snuck around the Gladiator pit long enough. They kind of saw us at this point. You know, we weren't fooling anybody. We had a big bullseye on our head. And we knew that this time to, you know, this window of opportunity was coming to a close. We had already kind of built some design patents and so forth and fended off some of the copycat players that were threatening us. But we knew that the bigger brands had things in the works. They were coming. They were gunning for us. So I talk a lot about how, hey, you know, Apple's not still out there flogging the iPhone 3 on us, right? They'd moved on. They'd realized like it was time to move on. And back to that whole least viable product, you know, we had done that, we'd iterated a little bit, but it was time to kind of move on, right? Consumers were kind of going to want more. So we unveiled new colors, we spent time in the field, we watched people in Hawaii where our products are pretty common, and saw some aftermarket things that consumers had done. And we're really fascinated, like how do they use it in their day in, day out life? And that drove a lot of our investments in product. So that did a big thing for us. And we're really excited about the beginnings of this and what this means for our brand. So those are the 5 steps, but there's one really important one that I want to also talk about. It's really foundational, and that's culture. So this is our purpose. So our purpose is to save the world from lukewarm. And it's not just what our bottles do, but it's that whole lukewarm is compromise and that whole just generic bummer that we experience, you know, that blasé corporate crap that we get to experience sometimes. We don't want that. Like, we want to banish that. So when we partner with a retailer, or we onboard an employee, or we go off site and do our annual retreat, we want it to not be lukewarm, right? We want it to be exceptional. And this is just one element of our culture. So in Bend, Oregon, where we have access to epic powder in the wintertime, great and sometimes dangerous single track mountain biking in the summertime, and amazing beer. Yeah, ours is a culture of, you know, work hard. What's great about this is I didn't learn this from tech. You know, Silicon Valley has one culture, and if you follow what's happening at Uber, it isn't always pretty. But what I've learned from the world of brands is that culture is above all most important. Because brands are built from the inside out, and the great brands have a culture that reinforces that, so that brand continues to stay strong, right? Jeff Curl of Stance was quoted as saying, culture is the leading indicator of brand strength. And I fully believe that, and this is the area I spend most of my time on now. So, that was that. If you ever get someone like me on stage, it's all smug and says, hey, it's great, look at all the stuff we did and everything, there's no issues, like they're freaking lying, and they're totally lying. So, it was not all great, it was not all easy. So let me share with you some of the things that we struggle through and still do today. So for a lot of these people that have built brands in traditional timelines, things were always a little unsettling when they came to Hydroflask, right? And I'd say, hey, it's okay. We're laying train tracks right in front of the train. So we're taking and accepting some of that risk. So what often happened is we would outgrow people, structure, and systems repetitively, like over and over again. Such a challenge for us. Leaving people on a roll too long because we like them and they fail, right? Or staying with something that worked for a while until it's obviously broken, and then we kind of deal with it. So anticipating that and dealing with it really hard. As we've gotten bigger and more places around the world, more SKUs, more people, it's hard. It's hard to keep things simple. It's hard to keep everyone on the same page. We struggle with that and work on that all the time. How to keep priorities really clear for the company. How to keep things on one page when it comes to our strategy and our priorities and so forth. And then believe it or not, it's amazing, but making the people stop working and go have fun is a struggle, right? It just doesn't sound like it makes sense, but I'd set the retreat and we'd announce it and there'd be groaning. I'm too busy, it's a horrible time to go float the river and talk about values and stuff. And then guess what happens? 2 days later, they're like, dude, thank you so much for getting me out. Like, I needed that. Like, I forgot how awesome these people are, how much I really enjoy the people that work at this company. So not just the annoying finance person that bugged me about something, it's a person I really like. We have a lot of common interests. And, rafting and floating the river is great, and we whooped the river guides at beer pong, that was awesome, and all this stuff, right? Really, really important, and so you kind of, as a leader, force that stuff to happen, right? Because again, back to our purpose, we end up looking like a sweatshop. That's lukewarm. That's not awesome. So a surprising struggle when I thought about this. So for all of us today in 2017, you hear this story, that was great, but what does it mean now? What does it mean when we look forward? And I'd say that, yeah, those storm clouds on the horizon, they're real. They're not going away. That we're past a tipping point. Who even knows what the next things of artificial intelligence and augmented reality and all this stuff, how does it all layer on and disrupt things further? We don't know, but it probably will. So the advice is it's time to get your house in order. Get your talent, get your capital, get your game plans together. Caveat, like I said before, fast in 2012 isn't fast in 2017. I don't know about you guys, but I heard someone say that the world's speeding up like it'll never be, it's so fast, it's never been this fast, and it'll never be this slow again, right? So there's that kind of sense of urgency. And then it's back to that focus, not focus on like, hey, we're doing this, let's focus harder on it, but focus in terms of almost stepping back and saying, hey, what business are we really in? Like Hydroflask, we were in the ice cold water refreshment business, not the bottle business. That changed our perspective on things. We've learned a lot more since then in terms of our engagement with consumers. It's not always easy to do that, so sometimes it's good to look at some examples of businesses that have done this well. So I'll share two. One is, it's a retailer in Brevard, North Carolina, outside of Asheville. And I went there because I did a mountain bike tour, and I go to the shop, and it was awesome. And they rent high-end bikes, they have great merchandise and so forth. But it struck me because there's this open front of house positioning for their big, mechanics pen. So it's kind of like the restaurants 20, 30 years ago started not be behind the back of house and come out and you see this beautiful commercial kitchen you're going to eat and right around at the bar. So to make the kitchen the centerpiece of the restaurant, they were doing this with kind of the mechanics pen. And there was great beers on tap. There was a kind of social club. And so it was like, whoa, is this like a bike rental touring business? Is it bike retail? Is it service? Is it a bar? Is it a community hub? And if you ask them all those questions, they'll say yes, 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 yes. Right? Because what business are they in? I think they're found something that defines what business they're in that isn't traditional. The next one we all know really well, and that's work revival. And I love these guys. I met them at Outdoor Retailer a couple summers ago. I'm walking through, they're not quite open to the public yet, or to the trade, it was just the vendors. And I walk through the area they're at, and I smell bacon coming from a canvas tent. And they just got back from Tofino, right, which was the inspiration for their next line, and they were trying to reenact that. So I popped my head in this tent, and there they are, cooking bacon on an open flame, you know, a little jet boil on a cast iron skillet. And I'm sure the fire marshal in Salt Lake City would have had a conniption if he had known. But to me, it just signified some of the things that makes work special, that they don't play by the normal rules, right? Because they're this part brand, part adventure travel movement. And that's an interesting positioning, because what business are you in? Do I really need another knit shirt or t-shirt? Probably not. But does my inner adventurer need to be inspired? I'd say yes, and work has figured that out. So I'll leave you with this quote, and I think this is written by J.K. Rowling, and it applies to kind of a life, right? How you live your life, but I think it's true with how we manage our businesses as well. That at a time when there's a lot of risk, and there's a lot of uncertainty, that these changes that we face, you know, doing nothing, this whole concept of failing by default is the likely consequence. And so, you know, the challenge I'd give to all of us and to industry is, let's not accept the default failure. You know, let's get our houses in order. Let's find out what business we're really in. Let's mobilize our talent, our capital, and let's go for it. Let's move fast. Let's be paranoid. Let's make things happen. And I guarantee you, if you find, you know, your right value proposition and you get the rest of the pieces together, you're in for the ride of your life. So strap in and have a great time. With that, I say thank you.